Hi, all. A warm welcome to all around the globe. I am here today with a new episode, actually, the seventh episode of Super Voice 2022. As you know, Synapse QA is really proud of bringing Super Voice, the first reality show in the testing space. Thanks to our sponsor, Uilicious, for trusting our vision and supporting us. So, a bit about Uilicious. Uilicious is a low code tool for automating tests for your web applications across browsers. So, their philosophy is test user journeys, not HTML. You can write tests that are easy to read, easy to understand, and easy to maintain with Uilicious. So, guys, just try it out. And this is Amala, and once again, welcome all to Super Voice 2022. So today we continue with the playoffs round. In this round, our contestants will be talking on the theme process, approaches, and leadership in testing. So this is the penultimate round of Super Voice, which means we are just one episode away from grand finale. Thank you so much for being with us and supporting us throughout our journey. Please watch our previous episodes from our YouTube channel, and the links are provided in the description box as well. So, without any further delay, let's invite our dearest judges for today's episode. So, today we have three judges, and first I welcome Anna. Anna is a renowned international speaker and a recognized expert in software test leadership. She is also the co founder of NYC Testers and the founder of Test Masters Meetups in New York. Welcome, Anna. Hi.
Hi, thank you.
How are you doing today?
Good, thank you. It's
Okay.
evening time here.
Okay. And our next judge is Naveen. Naveen is a seasoned performance engineer with 15 years of experience and the founder of QA Insights community. Welcome, Naveen. Hi.
Hi, how are
Okay,
you?
so I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, so let's welcome our next judge, Julia. Julia is the head of training and development at Quality Works and an international speaker. Welcome, Julia.
Hi,
Hi.
Amala.
Hi. So, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, it's a pleasure. So, yeah, all are ready, I think. So, let's start Super Voice 2022, Episode 7 Playoffs. Our first contestant for today is Jency. Jency is a software tester with around 9 years of experience. She is an active blogger and a community contributor. So I'll welcome Jency.
Hi, Amala.
Hi, Jency. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, I'm also good. Thank you. So, are you ready with your presentation? Okay, so let's start.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can I start?
yes, sure.
Okay. Greetings to one and all, and welcome everyone today. Before I start off with my presentation for today, I would like to wish everyone a very happy Diwali in advance since we are nearing the Deepavali season. So, my best wishes to everyone. We started the supervised journey a few months back, and today we are here again with another interesting round playoffs. So happy to welcome you all again for yet another presentation by me. Like by now, everyone knows about me, but still, few highlights about me I would like to highlight today. Myself, Jency, I'm working as a lead QA engineer at Bilenium IT Services. Some personal facts about me: I'm a mom of a 4-year-old kid. I hold ISTQB, CTFL, and CTAE certification. I started my community contribution a year back, specifically in software testing domain. Also, in my spare time, I try to help budding testers via Mentoring Club, a non-profit organization. I'm a certified mentor there too. I have an interest in writing articles. That's where I wear a hat of a blogger. So that was a short recap about me. Now let's move to the presentation for today. Before we jump to know what topic I have chosen for this round or to know the agenda that I have planned for you all to serve today, let me try to highlight few API attacks that happened in 2021. In January 2021, Parler, the social media platform, had its data exposed to world at large. The bug came in the form of lack of authentication because the API allowed third party to request data without any type of authentication, due to which private information of users were leaked. Another similar authentication flaw also happened with Clubhouse app. LinkedIn too was also not missed in this list. Using authentication free API, and hacker was able to scrap the LinkedIn to download data of about 700 million users. Why do we have these vulnerabilities in API? Have we ever thought about it? It can be due to various reasons: flaws in business logic, unhandled exceptions, and so on. But to me, what I feel is that there was some miss in the testing phase. Business APIs to connect services and transfer data. A compromise exposed and hacked API can expose personal data, financial information, or other sensitive data. Therefore, testing is a critical consideration when designing and developing APIs. To deliver a quality API to consumer, testing is must. However, it's also necessary to decide how to carry out these tests in practice. This takes us to today's topic. The topic that I chose for you all today is Test Design Theorem for API Testing. Let's check out what I have in store for you all today to know about API test design. Things that I plan to serve for you all is glimpse of APIs and API testing. To understand the test design phase, a prerequisite is to know the product under test. In our case, it is APIs. So I quickly show the APIs. What is an API all about? What exactly is API testing? What is the need of API testing? Later, we will know in detail the API test design approach that I learned in my API testing journey. Also, we will know some common mistakes that we can avoid in API testing. Alongside, towards the end, I will try to showcase some of the best practices that we can follow in API testing. So let's know about APIs and API testing. APIs are one of the limelight topic in recent years. Everywhere you can hear this term. Technically, API stands for Application Programming Interface. Like the name suggests, it's an interface that allows two different applications to communicate between each other. In simple terms, APIs can be thought of as a switchboard operator in early telecommunication days. Like how switchboard operators used to connect calls, APIs enables communication between applications or softwares. If I have to explain with an example, for example, let's say I want to browse medium.com. For which what we normally do is we type www.medium.com in our browser and the page is loaded for us. But what happens in the background is our request goes to the Medium's remote server. Once our browser receives the response from the remote server, it processes the response and displays the Medium page for us. In this case, Medium server is the API that enabled communication and allowed us to access the web page. So that was about API. Now that we have known about APIs, it becomes obvious that API testing checks whether the API operates correctly. This process helps to ensure the performance, functionality, security, and reliability of software meets expectation. This triggers the need of API testing. There are many tools available in market now to perform API testing. However, regardless of the tool we use, we need to know how or we need to have a clear understanding of the test we design. So let's learn about them in detail today. Today I'll be talking about API test design approach, the approach that I learned in my API testing journey. I would broadly categorize or I would broadly divide the API test design phase in 4 different phases. My first phase would be to understand the API specification and use case doc. Here what we will stress is to know the API better by going through the available resources that is handy for us. For instance, it is the API doc, use case doc, and so on. My next phase will be about test specification development. Here, what we need to understand or what we need to make clear is 2 different topics: what to test and how to test. When I say what to test, here our focus should be to identify the different test actions, the test flows for our test. When I say how to test, here our focus should be to identify the test techniques that we will use in order to perform our testing. That's about phase 2. Phase 3. Prepare the checklist for the test technique. In our previous phase, we have already identified the different test techniques that we will follow in our testing. So we need to understand or we need to capture the different checklist against each of these test technique in order to perform our testing. So that we will be concentrating in phase 3. My phase 4 will be about the test case development. In this phase, we need to finalize our high-level test cases by grouping our test scenarios and preparing the final test matrix based on it. So this is a short summary of the API test design approach that I used to follow in my API testing journey. Let's understand each one of them in detail in further slides. Why do we need to write documentation? Come on, why waste time on that instead of spending time in other areas? You probably would have heard these statements around you in some point or the other. Yeah, we know writing documents takes time. It's boring, but ideally it makes the entire project team lives easier. Keeping the above thoughts in mind, our first phase in API test design is understanding the API doc. To have a better test design planned, we need to know our API well. This can be accomplished only if we rely on the available API docs. These are ideally the manuals that contain all information required to work with API, with details about resources, methods, associated request, and response. By having all this information, it will be easy for us to determine the further steps, that is, what to test. So let's check out how do we define what to test or how do we get an answer to the question what to test. In test specification development, in this phase, like I said before, we'll be concentrating on 2 different questions I would highlight here. Point number 1 is about what to test. The next topic is about how to test. So let's check each one of them in detail. What to test. This step is connected with few attributes. To name them, they are test, test actions, and test flows. Test is nothing but the test cases that we are planning to design. Whether you're thinking of automation or manual approach, every test or every test case has a set of test actions. So what are these test actions? These test actions are nothing but a set of checks that we need to perform in each of the API test flows. So what is test flow? They are the different ways we plan to test the API under test. So once we have the clear picture or the clear layout of different test actions and the test flows, we are in a good shape to answer the question what to test. For better understanding, let's take it up with an example. I have an integration flow where 3 different APIs are communicating between each other. They are interconnected. So for this, if I have to plan my test action, what are the different test actions that I can plan for this integration? I can have verify the status code. When I mean status code, it can be, for example, creating a resource. It should return 201 for me. Unpermitted request, it should return 403 forbidden issue for me, and so on. Verifying the response payloads. Here my concentration would be to check the valid JSON body, whether it has correct field names, values, and so on. Followed is the security checks, the basic performance of API, and then validating your API endpoint by manipulating your query and path parameter, and so on. So these are some of the test actions that I can identify for my integration flow. Later, when we move to the test flows, what kind of test flows can we identify for this integration? It can be basic test where we will be testing the APIs individually, testing your request in isolation. Our focus here will be to just focus on testing the API endpoints individually, so that even if one fails, we stop the testing there itself rather than wasting our time. Next would be about the multi-step workflow scenario, where here the main focus will be about the data flow that happens between these APIs. The next is about the combined API and web UI test. Points to cover here is to ensure the data integrity and consistency between UI and API. So here the point that we need to plan is to execute the request via API and verify the test actions through web API, web app UI. And this can be done vice versa. This gives us a clear answer to our question what to test. So we have a group of test actions that we need to perform in our test flows. So this answers our question what to test. Now that we have known what to test, we should also know how to test them. So let's see how can we do that. We can perform our test by taking help of different test techniques. When it comes to API testing, we should concentrate on 4 major test techniques while designing our test. Functional API test. How we perform this test? We can perform this by validating the functionality of the API according to our business logic. So all the test actions and the test flows that we discussed in our previous slide can be covered in this area. API performance test. How to perform this is to monitor your API's responsive time. So we testers here have to make sure that the average response time for an API should be within the limits under various circumstances. API security test. How to perform this? Here we need to validate whether the security requirements are met or not. This can include authentication, permission, access controls, and so on. Finally, we have to also concentrate on the integration part of your APIs. How to perform this? We have already answered this in our previous slide, but just to give a highlight over here, it's more about data flow between your application when they are interconnected. So now this gives a clear overview of how do we test or how to perform our testing. Wait a minute, but we have jotted down the different test techniques. But what are the checklists that we need to follow in these different test techniques? Let's check them one by one. To start off with, let's start with the functional test. Functional test, by taking its definition itself based on the common definition of functional test, in regards to this API test, the checklist that I can highlight here is to make sure that API returns the desired output for a given input. Handle errors when results are outside of the expected parameters. So these are the major checklists that we can focus in functional API test. In today's presentation, I will be just focusing on the major areas or major checklists that needs to be covered in each of the test techniques. Apart from these checklists, there are many other things that we can concentrate. Moving ahead, API performance test. API performance will have a major impact on the application responsiveness. Functional test and performance test can go hand in hand. We can reuse the existing functional test, execute it repeatedly and simultaneously under various circumstances. Some of the common checklists here that we can focus is API response time, find the capacity limit points, and ensure that the system performance as expected under load, and it can fail gracefully even under stress. So these are the common checklists that we can cover in API performance test. Moving ahead, talking about API security test. API security test validates whether the security requirements are met. But there are certain checklists that we need to follow even in this particular technique. Test for API input fuzzing. What is fuzzing? Fuzzing simply means providing random data to your API until it spills something out, some info, some error message, or anything to imply that a random data has been processed by the API. Test for API injection attacks. Here, the most commonly covered check is the SQL injection. SQL injection attacks are successful when an unsanitized API input is processed by the database. So, it's needed to perform this particular test. Next is about test for parameter modification. Often, parameters sent through an API may be vulnerable to tampering, so it's better to cover them. My next checklist will be about test for unhandled methods. Web applications communicating using API often use various HTTP methods. These HTTP methods are used for saving, removing, or getting the data. So if server does not support an API HTTP method, ideally, it should show an error. So this needs to be covered as well. So that was about the different checklists that we can focus in API security test. Finally, to talk about the integration test of APIs. When APIs are interconnected, this technique is incorporated. We already covered in the test flow the different flows that we need to ensure in integrating your APIs and testing them. So this winds up the different test techniques of API test design approach that I have captured. Now we have covered the different checklist. Once the checklist is all done, we are good. We are in a very good shape to move ahead with our test case preparation, that is test case development. In order to simplify this process, what I have done is I usually follow these two approaches. My first approach would be to group my different test scenarios in different groups. And once my groups are ready, and once I have a better understanding about the different test actions that I will be performing or I will be using it for my API test, I will then prepare my test matrix. So here I have jotted down the generic test groups related to API test. My first group is about basic positive test, or you can say it as basic happy path test. Here we will group all the scenarios related to validation of basic functionality and the acceptance criteria for an API. The next group is about negative testing. Here we can group all the scenarios that we expect the application to gracefully handle problem scenarios with both valid and invalid user inputs. My third group will be about destructive testing. Here we will group all the scenarios, which is a deeper form of negative testing, where we intentionally attempt to break the API to check its robustness. Finally, or the final group that we can club all the scenarios is about security, performance, integration related scenarios. Once the grouping is all planned, we are in a good shape to go ahead and create our test matrix. What is this test matrix all about? I can show you a sample test matrix today that I have prepared for today's session. It is just a Google sheet that you can prepare with all the tests based on your scenarios that you have, that category that you have grouped, the test scenario category, test action category, and also you can, in detail write the test action description. This can form a very handy tool for you to create your test cases in a better way. This matrix can now be used to write a detailed test case. So this sums up our entire API test design approach. Moving ahead, so far we saw the design approach and we are comfortable with it. Although we know all these things, but still testers make certain mistakes. Let's check out some common mistakes that we can avoid in API testing. My first common mistake that I would like to highlight here is leaving out the response time assertions. Often our focus is more towards asserting or creating assertions for the response that we get from APIs. We miss to incorporate the response time feature as well. So it's one mistake that can be avoided when designing your test cases. Ignoring intermittent bugs. This is also one highlight topic that we often miss it. Missing to validate the headers. When we talk about API test, our major focus normally is on the URL, the payloads, the responses, and the environment files, and so on. But our focus should also be on headers. So make sure we don't miss that. Neglecting the cookies. This is one topic that is usually neglected by many testers, so make sure that we don't miss this while performing our API test. Ignoring request level authorization. This is often misconcepted that we often miss to understand what is authorization and authentication. That's where we miss this particular feature to incorporate in our API test. Finally, ignoring the regression test. This happens when we are ideally working in an integration project where my APIs are connected or multiple APIs are interconnected, and certain change request if comes in, and that is not tested with the connected APIs, that can create a hiccup. So it's mandatory to include the regression test in our API test. These are some of the common mistakes that we can avoid in order to make our API test fruitful. If there is mistake in place, always there is an area to improve ourselves. So let's see some of the best practices that we can adhere in API testing. Prioritize APIs. Prioritize when I mean this will make the testing easy for the testers. So make it a habit to prioritize your APIs when you are testing the APIs in hand. Choose the right tool to perform your API testing. Treat the API and test like how a customer would. Only then you can deliver a quality product. Maintain checklists before writing the test cases. It's a very good practice to create the different checklists that you would plan to perform in your testing and derive your test matrix accordingly. That can create a very good test case towards the end. Go through the real world API issues. Read articles related to real world API issues. This can give you or broaden your thinking of issues that is happening or issues that are related to APIs, and you can test your API in more better manner. To ensure complete test coverage, create API test cases for all possible input combinations of API. Make it a habit to not ignore the inputs that you use to randomly select data. Try to cover as much input combinations as you can while testing your API. This sums up to the presentation for today, but before we sum up with our presentation, let's quickly recap what we learned for today. We saw some of the glimpses of APIs and API testing. We learned in detail the API test design approach. We also learned the common mistakes that we can avoid in API testing. Finally, we ended up by knowing some of the best practices that we can incorporate in API testing. That ends my presentation. Thank you so much for your valuable time to listening to my talk. If you have any queries related to my presentation, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Thank you.
Wow, that was nice talk. How do you feel now after the
Thank you, Amala.
presentation?
Seriously, I was very nervous because the last two rounds I was a bit confident. My entire system, everything was in place, and today, right,
Yeah,
the
last minute
technical,
hiccups.
yeah, the last minute technical issues, my mind was little shuffled. I was a bit worried and a bit nervous that I myself could sense it when I was presenting it.
But in the presentation, it was all good. But thank you
Okay,
so much for giving the insightful, all the effective steps. It's
thank you.
really helpful while designing the test, and also the reminder on common mistakes. It's
Yes,
very, it's really, we can resonate it easily. So, okay, so are you ready for the judges' feedback?
sure, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so let's call our judges. I'll go with Julia.
Hi, Jency. Really great
Hi, Julia.
presentation.
Thank
I
you.
loved your slides. They were really eye-catching. I loved how, even though you said you were nervous, you knew your content, you knew what you were going to talk about, and so that allowed you to flow really easily. I like that you have your LinkedIn there so that if I could screenshot it, I can post it and tag you. Really good content. Something that I would add is if I was new to APIs and I didn't know what an API would look like, perhaps showing me what an API call looked like.
Mm,
Also, you mentioned like test techniques and you mentioned selecting tools. Maybe you could show a couple tools that are out there because I feel like there were some missing pieces that someone that's new to API testing, they would still have a bit of questions about that. Like, what does an
right.
API call look like? And then you were talking about statuses and headers. So before if before you get really into your talk, if you could show what an API look like and say, this is the header, this is the URL, this is what a response should look like, so that it would frame my mind around those things. So when you started talking about checking for different scenarios and different responses, I would already have an idea of what responses were. That's
Okay.
my only feedback in terms of just adding some more information for somebody that have no idea about what it looks like, so that they can frame that in their mind before you start sharing other information. But I like the information that you shared, and I think you did a good job.
Thank you, Julia.
Okay, thanks, Julia. We move on with Naveen.
Yeah, thank you, Jency, for the excellent presentation. I like the template you have used. It's
Oh,
very
thank
colorful
you.
and colorful and as well as professional.
Okay.
And apart from the flow of the talk is good. You maintain the flow, the pacing, everything is was perfect. But I don't see any case study. Basically, I don't see a story actually. Whatever
Okay.
you presented, it's commonly known for
Mm.
any tester who are into like 4 to 5 years of experience, right? So you touched
Okay.
all security, functional, performance, everything you touched. But those are, the points you mentioned. It is easily searchable. If I Google top
Mm.
10 mistakes in API functional or top 10 mistakes in security, right? You will get so many resources, right?
Mm. Mm.
I don't see something unique. Those points
Okay.
you were discussing.
Mm.
So that is my cons of your presentation. But otherwise, it's for freshers, right, who are getting started. So
Mm-hmm.
for them, it will be very useful. But
Mm.
people are already like industry leaders or professionals who have experience.
Mm.
For them, it might be uh, old information,
Okay. Okay. Got your point. Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Naveen.
Thanks, Naveen. Then Anna.
Thank you. Jency, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Really, very colorful slides. Really enjoy them.
Okay.
Um, I will echo Naveen. I
Mm.
was looking for a little bit more than a lecture, um, because something like that people can read, you know.
Mm.
But what's unique about your experience is something that I want to know. What was your lessons learned? Because you gave us like a lecture, but
Mm.
we don't know about you.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
What was your experiences? What makes your experience something that we can learn from? And what are the hiccups, or what were the issues that you experienced, and what would you like to um, warn the users so they can,
Mm.
the listeners, that they can learn from you? Because I kind of like, yes, it's great, I read everything, but what's inside? And is there something that I don't need to do? For example, there is always a context behind every testing activity, right? So you gave us very nice points of like what to do. What if you don't have time to do? Then what? Like, what would you choose? How would
Mm.
you
Mm.
go about the? What is your strategy on? Because we cannot test everything, and there is
Correct.
ways to, like in a project. What if the manager doesn't know anything about API testing? How to persuade the manager that, hey, you need to give me time to do it? All of that would
Mm.
be
Mm.
really great. Also, a lot of API testing is um, you would involve the developers, right?
Correct.
This is something that's a part of testing where you need to be working with developers really well.
Mm.
When you have like user interface testing, you don't even need to talk to developers. You come as a user and you test, right? But API is technical level, and there it's better to have a good relationship with developers. And this is something that I would really love for you to emphasize, because you've been
Sure.
giving us like Here is like you need to understand the implementation, and yes, exactly, you have to understand how the whole system is like connected, and you have to have a good relationship with developers because those people know those details. So
Correct.
I really would love for you to give more about the experiences of a tester who is doing API testing, because I'm sure that you have a
Hmm.
good relationship with developers, because you say read documentation, but sometimes the documentation doesn't say everything, right?
Correct.
So, so yeah, it's a very specific testing. It's a technical testing, and definitely was several concept that you kind of need to understand what this technique means. It's not
Hmm.
clicking buttons. It's much more. You have to design. It's like a system test. You have to design, the test environment. There are specific techniques, and yeah, it's more technical level testing, and it's definitely great for testers for their career to be expert in something like that. So all of that, like I would like for you to like promote it a little bit, not just like give a lecture of how it's done, but like
Understood.
why
Okay.
why is okay.
Yeah, got your
But
point, Anna. Yeah.
okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Oh,
Okay, thank you, judges. And Jency, congratulations. You well
Thanks.
done.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you
So
so
I
much.
have one question for Jency. So
Yes,
since
Anna.
we are very close to our grand finale, how do
Mm-hmm.
you rate or how do you express your experience for these 3 rounds or the entire journey of Super Voice?
Um, I'll start with my experience first. Very, very useful, I can say, because I am not a person who speak or who talk a lot with people, and I am very nervous when I am facing camera and all. So I don't open up. I took this as a challenge when I started my supervised journey. Um, First round was very tough for me, although because the time constraint was very limited. You have to cover all the areas. It took a lot of time for me to prepare for that 15-10 minutes talk. Gradually my improvisation happened, and the templates and everything, how to choose a template, these kind of things I learned gradually in the supervised journey. This was evident in my recent textbooks conference that I participated, and my talk was selected there. There too, there were many improvements that I had to do. Supervoice was one that helped me to improvise all those areas, and many people liked my talk in textbooks as well. So that's one evidence, because the supervised journey gave me, and this for sure I'll try to continue, because I'm a kind of person, if I don't if something is not happening for me, I will just lose it. I will not give it a try or something like that. I know that's wrong habit, but I have that habit within me. But right now, public speaking, I entered this with much confusion and all, but right now I'm in a state that yes, we can do it. Let's do more talks. Let's try to research on more topics. Let's help people around. That's what is running in my mind. So the experience is fantabulous, I can say. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So now
Thanks.
public speaking, creating presentation, everything has
Yes.
become a routine, right?
Yes, it's a routine now, and I can, guide people. Okay, choose this template. This will be very
Oh,
useful.
now you're like a pro. Okay,
So,
okay. That is a very
yeah.
good feedback we get from you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And yeah, all the very best.
Thank
Let's
you.
see in the grand finale what is going to happen.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. See
Thanks.
you.
Bye. Bye bye.
All right. We have next contestant on stage is Swathiga. Swathiga is a result driven professional with over 7 years of experience in the software testing field. So I welcome Swathiga on stage.
Hi Amala, good
Hi
to see you.
Swathiga, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Hope you're doing good too.
Yes, thank you. So are you ready for the presentation today?
Yes, yes, Amala.
Okay. So without delay, we can start.
Yeah. Hi, good morning and good evening, everyone. So, today I'm going to share my thoughts on what are all the groundbreaking test leadership and the strategies that we can implement in our testing process. So, moving to the next slide. Yeah, the role of test leaders. Most will have the question that is the the test leader role is really needed as we move more to the agile focused world. Like the testers are working as an individual contributors. They work independently. So the leaders are viewed like a cream in a cake, where the bread is the base and they see the testers are the base. But to my point of view, the leader is a binding product. For like binding, the cream is a binding material for the different layers of bread, is it? So how the leader is a binding product here, like they bind the gap between the various stakeholders to the testers by gathering the information from the BAs, the requirements and the defect fixers from the dev team, and also from the other stakeholders, so that the information will be will be provided to the testers, so that eventually the testers will not be, the focus will not be loosened by in the testing process. So in my view, the test leaders are very important. So to have the question like why was this missed, why this is not been identified, so a good test leader need not or cannot know to get into every intricate detail what each tester is doing, but we should be able to lean on the very well trusted team to help they ensure the detail is available to those who need it. So moving to the next slide. Testing values. So there are many values we should consider while doing the testing. Testing is a mindset, yeah, so anyone can do testing, but to me, like, the one who do the testing, they should do with the right mindset. They should test deep and well. So how it is possible there are some few strategies we can look into it. According to me, like the how a software to be assumed to be guilty until it's proven innocent, in that way we should do the testing. So in that way we can identify what are all the bugs, and from the user point of view, how the from the end user point of view, how the application looks like. By having the empathy and the role playing, we should do the testing. So with this mindset, we should these are all these mindset which is required for while doing the testing process. Testing is not just identifying and executing scenarios. Exactly. Why? Because like just giving the list of past test cases and failed test cases, it's not that, it's not ended only up to that. We are giving much more information, more to offer, like whether the defect is identified, how this defect is impacting the business, and how soon it needs to be fixed, and when this fix needs to be done. If it whether it has any dependent defects or any dependent module, so how soon, if we not do it in the right time or in this release or on the next release, since so how it will impact the business, how the loss will be. So it's like we are giving more information to the decision makers, who are the managers or the product owners, to for them to decide. So the next point is testing starts as a project starts. Yes, so from the beginning planning itself, the testing should be started. So in from the requirement gathering, the testing team should be involved in it, so that any piece of information is missed, okay, there is a the testing team, the tester will look the project planning, everything will, from the user point of view. In that way, if any information is missed or if any gaps are there, no, the user will have this feature lagging, so this needs to be also filled. So in that way, the testing team should be involved from right from the project planning, design phase, everything. So in that way, the testing team should be valued as a highly other team within the team or the organization. So going to the next slide. Yes, leadership skills. So there are many leadership skills, like will be implemented within the team, so as the team will be like team will be like will be in a healthy way. So to me, I'm going to share the views what all I have to for the team to be healthy in the work environment. So the first one is protect. Yeah, there is a lot of scenario, like more of the scenarios, the leader is the face of the team. It's therefore to keep the team out from the outer world, like other distractions from the work, uh, keep the team from the other distractions from the work. We have to see the we have to protect them from the unnecessary deviations. Like for example, testing was blocked due to an one open defect, which means that defect testing that defect is not like blocking the testing, but the tester is working on the other test activities like documenting the evidences and everything. So what as a leader can do, okay, when the team is approaching this defects needs to be fixed in within the current load or on the next load of incremental data. As an ETL tester, I can say that there is a data mismatch, so this defect is blocking the testing, so this needs to be fixed in the current load, or it can be next move it in the next incremental data. So we can just avoid this defect, we can proceed with the rest of the objects in the database. So that we can so this is the suggestion they are the development team will be asking based on the timeline. So what I can decide is like okay, as a leader, what I can decide is I can look for the resource bandwidth, I can look for the testing timeline, and criticality of the defect, whether it will impact on the next incremental load also or the next for following layers. I can decide it whether this should be fixed immediately or this should be fixed on the next incremental load of data. So in that way I will not let the tester to lose the focus while doing the work. So it's like need not to it doesn't need to get the tester involved in every conversation, but when it is needed we have to get in touch with them to get the information required for the further defect fixing nurture. So it's like sometimes our team members it's like how like to let them know that I am there for you, okay, it's okay, you are doing great. So it's like it is like a metaphorical alarm we are giving to them. So like in a lifetime example, I can say being a mommy of my 3-year-old son, whatever he scribbles or whatever he writes, I'm not in a though he go to a preschool, I'm not in a mindset like okay, this is not correct, you should go. He always write the letter f in an inverted way. I cannot say like blame, or I cannot criticize like no, this should be in this way. Rather I will just encourage him, I'll just appreciate even the small things. So eventually this positive manifestation and positive thoughts I'm giving towards my son, it's reflecting back. Eventually he is improvising because he is happy with what he is doing and he is getting the appreciation. The same way what we have to do in the team, whatever we have to identify the skills, some will be in the team, some in the team will be like good at analysis, debugging, debugging of the root cause of the defect, which data is causing this issue, whether it is in the source itself or in the next layer it is having the issue. The same way the sum will be very best in documenting how to put the things all the evidences and all the knowledge base, maintaining the knowledge base in implementing the processes. So we have to nurture those things by appreciating this, even the small changes they are bringing to the team. By that way the quality of the work will be eventually will be improvised, because they are happy and passionate and engaged with what they are doing, and they are feeling the recognized even with the small change they are trying to implement. So the appreciation is the best thing what we can do to the team to reciprocate in improvising the quality of the work. Next thing is empower. Yes, sometimes the decision needs to be made by the manager, but it's still important to take into account the opinion of the team. You cannot ultimately disregard those voice, but we have to listen to them as well. How there is a situation, for example, an ongoing test execution is going on. In meanwhile, an ad hoc testing request was from the management team was raised. So I know, being a leader, I know the criticality, I know the prioritization, because the data is already deployed in the production, but they have a risk that they want to validate that data. So considering the bandwidth on ongoing testing timelines, I can make the decision, okay, I can propose this timeline, not as already ongoing execution is going on. But I'm not going to do that, because it is always fair to hear the team members voices. So I asked to the team members, there's an ad hoc request, so I know already you are occupied. So what all the number, how much hours you required, how much effort does it require to do this ad hoc testing flow. So when I asked to them, they even feel that okay, their voices is heard. It's not like they are pressurized, it's not like okay, you have to do the this testing also, this as this is also priority one. So when they feel that like that, they have the their voices are heard, so they feel like, okay, I'm not like a machine, so my voice is heard, so I can work happily. So post, so the quality of the work will not be also reduced. So in that way we should give the we should hear to the team members. So this is the one thing, empower skill we should do as a leader. Evangelist is nothing but, like, in my eyes, manager are the team's front face, right? So they are the biggest supporter. So whenever they are possible, it's like we have to sing their praises, when to not only to the, it's not like protecting them from the higher hierarchy, but also pricing their whatever the accomplishments they have done to the higher hierarchy. So in that way the team will be recognized. So there are many team members and the many organizations in what they are doing, how they are implementing, what are the new process, that higher hierarchy is not at all get to know the visibility. But that being the team leader or the manager, they have the visibility. So they should propagate that to the next level. So how, so in that way the team will also be growing in a healthy way. They will work so happily, and they have, it's like kind of a boost for them to improvise what they are doing, continue what they are doing with a happy face. So these are all the four leadership skills, as I, in my view, that is required for the healthy team. So I conclude that what we sow we can reap. The same way we have to continuously support them, and we have to nurture them. So it's like raising the right awareness. It's not like, just like a puppet leader listening to the manager. The leader should say yes to everything, so that the team members also will have to follow the leaders order, or leaders instruction. I cannot say order, leaders instruction. But it shouldn't be that way. We have to listen to the team members also. So by that way we have to, we all, by, how we can do it. So we have to, as a leader, I will do a self retrospective. Okay, I have put this information to my team members, and they have given came back with this decision, this opinion. So how we can improvise it, and how this opinions are being considered, analyzed, and I am putting that to the management. So doing a regular self retrospective, we have to continuously evolve with the current trend, so that we will be ensured with whatever the retrospective feedbacks we get it from ourselves, are we aligned, and to believe in the team members voices. By that way we can improvise the team in a healthy way, a happy work environment. So moving to the next slide. Okay, this is the some of the strategy I want to share, which is helpful, which will be so helpful in the testing process. So testing in production, many may think, what testing in production, who will do testing in production? It's like a big risk we are going to take. But it's not that it's deployment, testing the deployment of the untested features. It is like, so it is not just like someone who is testing without testing in production without doing the proper testing, pre-prod testing or regular regression testing. It's like complementing the proper testing, continuous testing of the application post deployment. That is the testing in production. Yeah. So why testing in production is bad? Why there is a always like statements going like, no, testing in production is not a good idea. It should not be that way. So haphazard testing, if we do the testing aimlessly, like we are just, how do we do the exploratory testing, how to make the software guilty until it's proven innocent in our regression testing phase in the pre-prod environment. We should not do the testing in that way in the production data, because there is a huge loss, there is a huge risk of losing the business or losing the data. So in that way we should not do the haphazard testing in production. So especially after post GDPR era, when we do the testing in production, we should be so cautious, because the loss of data and the data leakage might lead to the legal issues also. The other one is lack of pre-production environment. Yeah. So we should not skip the other testing methods, other testing, regression testing, dry run, and unit testing, and the user acceptance testing, pre-prod testing. We should not skip any of the testing processes, like just because we are going to test in the production. So lack of pre-production environment, if we skip that way because of the criticality and the deployment time, it's obviously going to be a risk. And no easy way to roll back the faulty deployments. Yes, for sure. For example, if you're if a banking financial application is upgrading, and if there is some when we do the sample testing in the production data, when we see some defect, some defect which needs to be like addressed or which needs to be fixed soon, but it's not easy to roll back the faulty deployments, because already the users will be having access to it, user will interact with the data, will be updated. So it's not that the testing in production means we have to do the defect fixes in the production data. And lack of proper backup strategy, yes, which means when there is a disaster happening, the recovery strategy, how the backup restoration happens, what is the strategy has to be followed, what are the critical test strategies or test cases we have to run while doing the restoration. So these to be these things to be ahead, we have to prepare, we have to have it in hands when we do the testing in production. Performing production test at inappropriate times, yes, when the application or when more number of users are using the application during the peak hours, if we do the production testing, it's not going to work. It's going to impact the data and also the business. So when during the downtime, during the when the users are not using on most of the time, those time we have to use it for the production testing. Yeah. Testing in production done right, yes, how it is, why it has to be done right, and how it has to be done right. Why? Because testing in production, it's to like to get as often we cannot it's impractical to exactly replicate the production data or the resources whatever they have in the production. It's impractical for most of the time for some of the scenarios. So for that case, we need to do the testing in production. And how? And what is the benefits we will get to verify the scalability of the app? Yes, that's what I said. Then the load testing has to be done in the production. So how, if the more number of users are using a particular module at the particular time, how the application going to respond? So to verify that, the load testing in production, it has to be done. And testing or monitoring your application is the last line of defense again such debugs. Yes, that is true. Because it's like when we monitor the application in the production, like we have the it's we have the naturally how the user use the application, we will have that privilege, and it can help to identify if disaster is happening ahead. And it's also like eventually to have the feedback earlier before the users are using the applications. So how this can be implemented? A B testing, for example, we can A B testing. So in this method, we have to divide the users into group A and group B. For group A users, we will give the application of the recent version, that is called control. And for the group B users, we will give the application with the potential new feature, the modified version, that is called treatment or variation. By giving the access to two different set of users, group A and group B, we will have the feedback earlier, and how they are feeling, and how the application is, and what needs to be improved. So with this analysis, we can decide, okay, whether we have to go for the modified version, or with the be with the current version due to some features which is not working as expected. So by this way, we can by this method, we can, without impacting the business, we can do the testing in production. Yeah. How this can be enabled? Feature flagging. It's just nothing like a if statement. If by hiding a feature, feature toggling, how I can say it as feature toggling, by hiding the feature behind a toggle button, by checking the toggle box, the particular functionality will be available only for a small set of users who has that toggle box enabled. For the remaining, the application will be the same of the standard version. So by that way, the users can the testers can test the data with the latest feature. So generally, for the user acceptance testing, it's always a lengthy process before the deployment. It will be like done very heavily. So in that case, for when we introduce a new feature without impacting the timelines of deployment, by enabling this feature flagging, the UAT testers can test the data in the production environment with this feature. So it's like so helpful, and it will not impact the business and the timeline also. And the next one is canary release. Yes, canary release is a risk mitigation tool. How it is? So when we release rather releasing the latest version or the application to all users, by releasing only the application to the small set of users, or by releasing some important modules, that's going to be a major feature. And it impacts the various other module also. So it can be released with the small subset of users. With that way, if the testers are testing for the small subset of users, if they test the application with that latest version, and if it is fine, eventually that will be rolled out to the all users. So how for example, what I say, people app, one of my friends said that people app, like how before they launched the people app, they did beta testing in that way. So earlier ahead, before launching, they released this app to only for the small subset of users. With that, they explored it. They did that the users explore did the testing in all the ways, exploratory and in all the ways. And by analyzing those feedbacks and considering those improvisations, the people app has been launched to everyone. So it's a risk mitigation tool, I would say. So it's differ from the AB testing, because AB testing is mainly to for the potential new feature which will not be impacting the business. But the canary release is like a risk mitigation tool. It is for the major important feature. So by releasing only to the small subset of users, we can do the testing, and eventually we can give it to everyone. The next one is application monitoring. Application monitoring, like it's for the load testing. We will generally they do the monitoring the application. So it's always like, it's most of the times it's impossible to get the real to replicate the data, and to get the real number of users, how they are being how the number of users are being using the application. To get the real count, it's like sometimes impossible to have that. So with that real user monitoring, with this method, we have to see how the application handle the real requests as they come in. And the next one is synthetic monitoring. It's like a simulated monitoring by creating bots, and hence the name, the bots. By creating the bots, we can identify how, okay, the data is being flown to this many people, and it's how the application is responding to this many people and on the particular time. So by that way, we can monitor the application, synthetic monitoring. So what I conclude from here is, the production and testing, it's not something bad. It is a supplement to the testing, good supplement to the testing strategy. So it can play a bigger role in the larger B2C environments, where we can run a valid test without impacting a significant portion of the enterprise customers. So it is a supplement. It's like it can be carried out in the testing as a part of testing process post the UAT, or in line with the UAT testing. So that's all with respect to my today's presentation, and thank you for listening to my talk. And anyone have any questions? Yes.
Thank you, Swathiga. Thank you for sharing this wonderful topic.
Thanks, Amala.
Okay, and I really enjoyed the comparison between leadership skills and the day to day things. That was wonderful. Everyone can relate. And also, yeah, you are giving an awareness about testing values to everyone. So, thanks for that too, as a tester. And yeah, let's ask our judges about the feedback. I'll start with Naveen.
Hi, Swathiga.
Hi,
Thanks.
Naveen.
Thank you for the excellent slides. Uh, the initial, the first few slides, like when you talk about leadership, I like the examples you mentioned for each topic, right? Nurture and empower, right? So I like the examples, the real-time examples you gave. That I liked it. And the most of the presentation is about stressing the testing in production, right? So that is one different angle you brought it up. So I like it. So on the other side, it is very tough to talk about leadership. It is tough to engage audience when you talk about leadership. So one thing I would have done is I would have started with some story about leadership. So why we need leadership? What is the importance? Nothing to do with testing, just some storytelling. That will engage the audience, that will put the hook on them, and then they will grasp your subsequent slides. So that is one thing you would have done differently. And when you talk about the testing in production, you would have also mentioned some drawbacks of testing in production, because I've been doing testing in production for past many years, so I know what are the downsides. The planning is very important there. You cannot just okay, tomorrow is a release, 1 week I can test in production. No, you cannot do that. You have to plan before 3 months before itself, right? So that is one point I can bring up here just to enlighten, but there are other points as well. But otherwise, yeah, you brought the leadership plus the importance in production testing in a good way. Thank you.
Thanks, Naveen.
Thanks, Naveen. Let's ask Julia.
Hi, Swathiga. Thanks for your presentation. I liked that you knew what you were talking about. As Naveen said, when you were talking about leadership, you had some really good examples there. And then you had some really things that stuck out to me in terms of like testing is guilty before it's proven innocent. That really stuck to me. And I think you had another one, but I'm not remembering it right now. So I liked those anecdotes that you gave. For me, I thought that you could have had more slides. It could have been fuller, because when you were talking about the leadership skills, you spent a long time on that slide because you had so many great points. If maybe you had broken out each of those leadership skills into an individual slide with maybe sub points, I thought that would have maybe helped you bring them across more, because I really liked the examples that you were giving in terms of how do you show appreciation and how do you, from a leadership perspective, help your test team. Those were really great and I liked those. But it could have been brought across better if you had just had them broken out a bit more on different slides. Because it ended abruptly to me based on the slide I was following along with that. So if you just had that, that would have been great. Maybe a recap slide would have been good to have as well, just to say, okay, these are the things that you should be doing. These are the things that I talked about in my presentation. Also, you were talking to me a bit fast, and if you just slow down a bit and just remind yourself of exactly what you were talking about, you would have come across a bit more less nervous and a bit more confident, because of how you were speaking really fast. It made it, you would sometimes trip a bit over your words and what you were going to say. And you had really great points that I enjoyed hearing about. So just take your time, breathe, and we're all here to support you. But thanks for what you shared. I really like the examples that you shared, and I think you did a good job.
Thanks, Julia.
Next, Anna.
Hi, Swathiga. Thank you very much for sharing.
Hi,
Um,
Anna.
we've been waiting for you.
Okay.
We've been waiting since last few days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I will echo Julia here because I actually had my very first talk was similar to yours. I know that you're coming from experience, and as a leader, you have a lot of experiences and you want to share it, and it's really a lot, and you try to combine it, all your experience, into half an hour. I made this mistake on my very first conference topic. I actually put so much. I had like 45 slides for half an hour, and I put and I'm like watching your presentation, and I have like flashbacks. I put the leadership, you know, leadership highlights. I put the testing methods highlights, how to do it, what to do, and I put all my experience in this presentation. And what happened is I tried not to rush, and I noticed that you rush, and there is a reason to it. I tried not to rush, but I went over time, and I got like negative feedback from the audience because it's a conference and they have to go to another session, right? So they want to learn from me, but they couldn't. And then I tried to measure myself. I actually, with this same presentation, I was invited to the meetup where they didn't have restriction. And it turned out that my talk was like for hour and 20 minutes.
Okay.
And that made me, and I feel that this is what is happening with you here. You honestly created the talk for like an hour and you're trying to squeeze it into 30 minutes. So here's my advice to you: take a deep breath and cut.
Okay.
Cut whatever you want to cut, but learn to like run this presentation for yourself first. Not rushing. Don't measure the time. Just like go as you would go with this presentation and measure how much time it actually took, and then cut, because you have to make these hard choices. Otherwise, I'm listening to you and I'm like, I feel that you like running and I'm trying to run with you. And for half an hour, I get tired of
Okay.
like, I feel that you're rushing and I'm trying to rush. And I'm like, why are we like running here? So,
No, I was
there is
seeing the time as well, Anna. So the
absolutely,
so that's
absolutely.
why.
Yeah, your experience is very valuable, and consider that you will be a conference speaker for a while, for a long time, and you're gonna bring all these points across. There will be times because you're already in conference speaking. So yes, you will teach, and it doesn't have to be one presentation. It could be three, you know, and just like relax. Don't worry about today. Think about, okay, today I'm gonna teach you this piece, and it's gonna be powerful because it's coming from my experience. I can defend my learnings, and I'm confident about what I said. So I want to suggest to you, don't worry about all the content. Think about impact. Okay, don't rush, don't run.
I also want to add to what Anna said. What you talked about today could have been two talks. So leadership and how to
Absolutely.
be a good leader, and that 4 points that you had, that was really impactful with the examples that you gave. That could have just been it, and we would have been wowed. Testing or not testing in production, and what the benefits of it, and what Naveen said you could have added, that could have been an entire 30-minute thing, because you do have the knowledge about all of those things. So think about just one main thing and how impactful that one thing is going to be and how you can execute that.
Sure, Julia, noting taking that points. Yes.
Okay. Thank
Good
you,
luck.
judges. Sorry, Anna, you want to go?
No, I said good luck.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, all right. Congratulations, Swathiga. All the best. Well done. I think you
Thanks,
really
Amala.
have yeah, you really got a good feedback and takeaways from this judges' feedback.
Sure.
And I also asking you, would you like to share any thoughts on supervised journey?
Supervised to me like where my speaking oration was like when I was in a primary school. After that, now I am doing it again. It's like after a long time, so it's a new experience for me. Like reviving my memories from the childhood, because during for an Independence Day, on the those times I did the public speaking to before the audience of school people and everyone. But here I'm it's like it's a new experience, and the learning is a lot for me than from a regular routine. It's a lot of learning I'm taking on every round. So I'm looking forward with considering all the feedback, so I'm not going to stop here. So I'll continue to do better considering all the feedbacks. Yeah, it's a very good learning.
Okay, thank you so much for your kind words.
Thanks, Mahat.
Okay, see
Thanks,
you. Thank
Amala.
you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Okay, now I call upon our last contestant for this episode, Mahathee. Mahathee is a project lead quality at Persistent Systems in India. Welcome, Mahathee.
Thank you, Amala.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good also. Thank you. So,
Yeah.
are you ready today?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with your presentation. All the
Okay,
best. We can
thank
start
you.
now.
Yeah. So, a few years before, if you see, my view of testing and my view of Agile was as shallow as this picture shows. I knew about Agile only in the perspective of an interview. I knew what Scrum meant. I knew the frequently asked questions in an interview. Apart from that, I didn't know why Agile was used and what was the difference between Agile and Scrum. As I understood this, I began thinking whether teammates in my projects had the same kind of an understanding. So I began questioning them. And as I did this, I realized this was an industry wide problem. This was not my problem alone. And later, I also saw something very strange, and that was job descriptions having a misunderstood view of agile. And from there, to people, to leadership, to different teams, and in different contexts, this just increased. So then I thought this was not only my problem, and this was the whole industry's problem, and maybe I should do something to educate myself. While I did, I still noticed the same problem perished. Even today I see this word agile being misused in a lot of places. So hello everyone, I'm Mahathee. I work as a project lead quality with Persistent Systems Hyderabad, and this is my Twitter handle which you can reach me at. So today, as a part of the theme engineering, process, and leadership, I would be talking about agile testing principles in a nutshell. Nothing new, but this talk is inspired from the book Agile Testing Condensed by Janet Gregory and Lisa Crispin. The first time I read this book was through a book reading club conducted by Ajay Balamurgadas, and I really loved this book. And then I began to deep dive into every concept explained in this book. This book is like a Bible for agile testing or people who want to acquaint themselves with agile or the related concepts. You can Google it too, but Google has a lot of information which is correct and which is incorrect, and it becomes difficult sometimes to differentiate between what is right and what is wrong. And this book had cleared my understanding of a lot of concepts. And as a result of this, I was able to talk to the leadership in a confident manner. And this was one of my wins that I achieved with this book, and I dedicate to this book. So, the agenda for today's talk is from this book and agile testing, the whole team approach, and what should be your mindset, and how do we apply test planning in different agile contexts, and what are the various approaches you would be using, and some helpful models and agile testing today. So, first, the basic. What's agile testing? Most people think agile is a methodology, agile is a framework, agile is a technology. And doing testing in an agile way is agile testing. But actually, agile means a collaborative way of doing testing. And this occurs continuously from the start to the end. So, we have to deliver frequent value to our customers because customer experience is what that matters for us every day, every moment. And also, one of the things that we focus here is quality and quicker feedback loops. So, as a result of this, we focus on continuous testing and the continuous testing models. If you see this figure, this is a common figure that has been used in many conferences by many speakers as a part of their presentations. This is by Dan Ashby, and this figure basically emphasizes that testing has to be done all throughout, showing us the importance of continuous testing. And next, have you heard of testing manifesto? Most people would have heard about what is an agile manifesto. I'm sure many people wouldn't have heard what is a testing manifesto. So, Today, I would like to tell you what a testing manifesto is all about. Testing manifesto, like Agile manifesto, is a set of principles that you can use in your testing, in your day to day work, in different projects across different contexts. And this basically talks about certain principles. For example, testing throughout over testing at the end. If you remember, a few years back, we were using waterfall, where we used to test at the end. And typically, developers used to develop and testers used to test at the end. And now, with the advent of Agile and DevOps, we test throughout. Similarly, have you heard of the concept of preventing bugs over finding bugs? There is a beautiful article written by Pradeep Soundarajan which talks about this. If you have never read this, please read about this in his blog Deep Test. And then testing your understanding over checking the functionality. Whenever a requirement is given to test, do you understand it? Do you analyze it? Do you patiently take out the time to think about how to test or what are the different areas to look at, or you quickly plunge over to test it? So, this is one mistake I was doing as a part of my career in my initial days and also in my mid career. And then building the test system over breaking the system. I see many tweets on Twitter saying that testing is about breaking the system. Really, testing is not about breaking the system. It's about building a system in an efficient and robust manner by gathering information which gives different stakeholders to make certain informed decisions. And then the most common one, team responsibility for quality over tester responsibility. This is a mindset change that I'm recently observing even in the place where I work or in the country where I live, India. So earlier I used to see even my manager telling me that it's only the tester's responsibility and quality has to be bared by the tester alone, which was very devastating to hear. And now, when the entire team shares this responsibility, it becomes much easier. It's relieved. It's like it's such a happy moment to have this kind of an understanding. So this is what the testing manifesto talks about, and I've also placed the link below if you can see where did I get this from. So please read through. And then the common 10 principles for agile testing. As you know, agile is about people, and you have different teams that you work with day in and day out. You have external teams, internal teams, and third party teams. So you have to provide continuous feedback, and also you have to deliver value to your customer, and always have a face to face communication, and always stand up for what is right, tell the truth, and keep it simple in most situations without any kind of jargons. And also, agile is mostly about self organizing teams. Nobody micromanages you, or nobody has the power to dictate things over you as to what you need to do. And basically the focus here is on people, and also you need to enjoy what you need to do. The second thing, the whole team approach. The whole team approach and the mindset is the second thing, or the second aspect that I'm going to focus here. Because earlier testers or testing, everything was spoken in terms of a single person's responsibility, a single person being blamed, a single person bearing responsibility in all situations. I think this mentality has changed with this kind of an approach that is coming into picture. So the whole team approach and agile mindset is what is our focus. And if you see, in the earlier days where waterfall was the embraced model of development, people used to work in silos. I remember in my first project, I was working in an isolated cubicle in one corner of the room that I was sitting in, and the developer was in the other place. And whenever I had to reach out to the developer, it was a pain. So this challenge is being overcome by agile, as it's a continual and iterative process, and all the team members know what they are going to build and what is their understanding of what product they have to build and what value they will be delivering to the customer. So basically the focus here is to build quality throughout the process in whatever phase you are. And as a part of the whole team testing approach, there are certain solid foundation of practices that are mentioned here. One of the some of them are the test driven development approach. So the test driven development approach is mostly confused with BDD. So people think BDD and TDD are the same. BDD is more of collaboration between people, and test driven development is also a development approach where your requirements are converted into test cases. First you design your tests, they fail, and later as the feature progresses, these tests pass. So people think BDD is only about given when then is all about collaboration. So that is also a common misunderstood term, just like Agile and Scrum. And then you have your exploratory testing in place. And most testers don't understand the importance of having an understanding of a solid business domain. Working in domains like banking and insurance, I realized over the years that it is super important to have a good understanding of the domain that you're working. It gives you an edge over most of the testers. Solution to all problems may not be automation. Sometimes solution to a problem might be a good domain understanding too. And have you ever tried building relationships with experts in your team? For example, a good UI designer or a good UX designer. I've tried embracing this approach as in the recent projects that I worked with. In an insurance project that I worked with, I did not even know what is insurance or why is insurance needed except for the theoretical understanding that I had. So working with this BA or working with this expert designer made me get a better understanding of the domain, and also proactive problem solving. Everybody thinks of testing or development. Nobody thinks about problem solving in most cases. But the best designers, the best testers or developers are real good problem solvers. And also, as I earlier mentioned, you have quicker feedback loops and definition of done. This is one of the most interesting area. Most people have their own version of definition of done. For example, in my earlier stages in project, I used to think because I was a fresher, my only role was the definition of done was completing the user story that was given to me, delivering it to the team, demoing it, and that was definition of done. But I was totally wrong. When my Scrum Master tried to educate me about the definition of done, and he had conducted a meeting so that we all the team members agreed to a common criteria, I really understood what definition of done meant. And also team members becoming specialized generalized specialties. For example, I'm a tester. I could also know a little bit of development, a little bit of fairly good understanding of a design, and things like that. So zero tolerance to defects or escaping of defects is another good practice. So the test planning. So this is the third area that we would be focusing on. And some of the aspects that we would be considering on when we are planning our tests is we typically assess the capabilities of the team and what skills the team members have. And this is a very shallow way of assessing the aspects. So the three aspects here that I would like to consider are team, product, and planning. As for team, you may have different kinds of teams. Some teams are distributed and some teams are co-located. So for distributed teams, the major challenge is integration tests, or if somebody commits their code, a lot of conflicts and dependencies. And if for co-located teams, this might be not be the challenge. Similarly, a product that you're developing, what domain it is from, what is the environment in which this product will be deployed, and then similarly planning. Most people think planning is an area where we consider only in terms of releases, but this is totally wrong. Planning can be done in terms of releases, in terms of stories, in terms of features, in terms of regression tests. In a lot of areas you could consider planning. So these are some areas that you could consider as a part of test planning. And if you see, also sometimes we can also encounter a scenario where we need to plan for multiple teams. So in a release, sometimes it's not only your team that is working, there are multiple teams. For example, in the given example, if you see, there are four teams A, B, and C, and D. So these four teams are commonly working towards a release test planning. And as a part of their test planning, they have the test maps, test mind maps, and the test metrics in place. So planning applies here too. The next thing that we would be discussing is the testing approaches. And as a part of the testing approaches, I would be covering the following. The first one is guiding the development or the developers with examples. Second thing is enabling collaboration. And the third one is explore continuously. The fourth one is testing your quality attributes, as quality attributes differ from project to project. And how would you test in DevOps? So let's look into each of them. So the first thing I would like to say about is ATDD. So ATDD is acceptance test driven development. So it's similar to TDD, but with a greater collaboration between developers, testers, business users, and a lot of stakeholders that are involved. So this is one of the way you can guide your developers in a better manner. And another approach that you can use is BDD here. Similarly, when I worked in an insurance project, I wasn't sure about what these three amigos meant, because prior to this project, I worked in a banking project where this term was not even used. So it was quite new to me. So I began to understand what these three amigos meant, and this is also again a common terminology that is used in Agile, and also here. If you invite the right people to these amigo sessions, there will be a greater collaboration and a shared understanding of the goals and what has to be developed as a part of your product. And the next thing that I recently came to know about was impact mapping or example mapping. Impact mapping is like finding out your why, who, how, and what. So basically, here we have the concept of a goal that is tied to an actor, and this actor has an impact and a deliverable associated with it. So this is really an approach that I have been using for most of my user stories, and I feel there is a lot of advantage and change to the way I think after using this approach. And example mapping is also a recent technique that I encountered. We have not used practically as a part of any projects, but I would love to use in my upcoming days. And this is what I'm currently focusing about, where you have a story and you have rules defined for your story and as examples associated to it, and you can ask questions based on that. And these will be mapped. Every example will be mapped to a certain rule which is associated to a story. And the next thing is explore continuously. How do you explore? By asking good questions, by knowing about personas, jobs, or roles, and by knowing about the workflows or the user tools, and how many testers do identify the risks and add value to the customers that they work with. Not many do this. So this could be a good area to explore if you really want to add value to your project or value to the product that you're developing. And pairing. This is another awesome way. I've seen or learned mostly from hackathons and partners that I've worked with. Pair testing with a developer gave me a different insight. Pair testing with a designer gave me a different insight. Charters is another area that I learned about. This I learned from the book called Explore It by Elizabeth Hendrickson. A charter is nothing but a mission as to what you're going to test, what is the goal of your testing. So this is nothing but charter. So this is something that I wanted to share about how do you explore continuously. And how do you test your quality attributes? So quality attributes differ for different projects. For some, for some it might be reliability or maintainability or scalability or number of defects. So project to project, quality attributes will differ. So as a part of this book, I learned about something called as the quality attributes meta model. So from this model, you can understand that the quality attributes are basically classified into operational and development. So operational has a set of parameters that you can look at, and similarly, development has another set of parameters that you can see. If for the development, we have considered efficiency, flexibility, and maintainability. Not all attributes will be applicable in a given context or to a given project. They might vary. And similarly, the second thing is a task board with a future in mind. As the name itself suggests, agile. So, agile is nothing but, although it's an iterative approach, you have to have a future vision of what product you're developing. So, basically, a task board with a future in mind of the story that you're working with. So, different statuses: ready, in progress, in review, and done, and with the capacity to accommodate the future changes, is what this task board will basically have. And then the next thing is testing in DevOps. So this is a common continuous delivery and continuous deployment is a term that we frequently use. But again, but again, people do not understand things just like agile or BDD or TDD. So the same struggle continues here as well. If you see a tester or a team member or any member who works in the project is making a commit, and all the blue colored tasks here are automated, while the yellow color tasks that you see are things which are not automated, that is, which is done with human intervention. So so basically, another aspect that I wanted to focus here in the testing in DevOps part was mostly testers focus on functionality alone. They feel if they test the functionality, it's over. And after functionality, if they would cover another area, that would probably be your usability or UX, and that's the end of testing. But there's a lot to testing. Have you ever thought of scenarios of testing in production? And have you ever thought about concepts like monitoring or observability? So, another good read or good understanding of this concept has been explained by Cindy Sridharan's model on observability and monitoring. So, I'm not deep diving into each of the topics because it'll take a lot of time, but these are the best things that I could adopt from what I've learned. And certain helpful models. What has really helped me out? So the agile testing quadrants. So I've never heard of this before when I started working in agile teams. So if you see this, a quadrant is usually a quadrant is a portion of a graph. If you see, usually most people have an understanding of quadrant as a term that is used only in mathematics, but quadrant can be even used to the place where you work testing development. So according to this agile testing quadrants, there are four quadrants if you see, and two are business focused and two are business focused, and then two are technology focused. If you see, the first quadrant is nothing but you design your tests that guide your development, and in the second one you design your tests in a business facing way that guide your development. And third one, if you see, they are business facing, but they are critiquing the product that you're developing. And the fourth one is similarly technology facing, critiquing the product. Two in favor of the product and two in critiquing the product. And the aspects that are being considered are business facing and technology facing. So this is about the agile testing quadrant. And then visualizing a test automation strategy is one area that I wanted to cover, because whenever you talk about a test automation strategy, most people would go back to test pyramid, and their understanding of test automation strategy is limited to the test pyramid. So, in as a part of this book, I encountered Seb Rose's test automation iceberg. This is a beautiful way of having a good test automation strategy in place, where we are designing the strategy in such a way that it is business readable and testable, so technical. And the most important areas for testing would be your integration tests and the component tests that would be falling under a part of your technical part of the iceberg. And next, the last part that we have come today to is agile today. So, what's agile today? Is it a new term? No, I just meant to say how is agile, how is the phase, or how is agile being perceived today? and what are the aspects that are being covered as a part of it. So as a part of this, I took three aspects into consideration. First thing is the tester's new role. There's nothing new in terms of a tester's new role. By tester's new role, I meant the tester's role is evolving. People tell testers testing. There's no place for a tester in a team. After a few years, testing will end. I've heard in my in my formative years of my career, I've been hearing from people that testing will end. So when this book told me that there are a lot of concepts related to testers' new role, and one of the concept that I could talk about here is the T-shaped tester. So I was working for a project, a banking client, where I was my part of my job included coding in Java and using Cucumber with TestNG. And after a few days, I was assigned a task by the development lead that I would be also learning Python in a few days and contributing to the development. I was very shocked. Why is this? Why are they asking me to learn Python? Why is this new change of flow? Then they told me something that they are implementing the concept of a T-shaped developer or a T-shaped role. So this T-shaped role is basically that every person in the team needs to know basic of everything at least. So later, after a few days, I began learning Python, and I started working with a developer on a Python related task also as a part of that sprint. Partly he would work and partly I would work. So there was a great collaboration. So that's how I became a T-shaped developer. And then this book also tells about the ingredients for success. So one of the ingredient or the main ingredient for success that this book highlights about is the whole team approach over a single or isolated way of working. And then the agile testing mindset for any task, for any activity. Mindset plays a very important role. And similarly, even in Agile, having that Agile testing mindset is very keen and important. And how you automate your regression tests is also another area. And how do you give feedback? Most people keep or accumulate feedback so that they could give it in the fag end of the cycle or the end of the project or whenever the situation arises. But this is not a right way to do. If you give a continuous feedback and a quicker feedback, this will lead to an improvement and deliver in the success, and it will attribute to the success of the person and also to the project as well. And also some of the foundation or core practices that are being used here. So reliable test environments. How reliable or robust is your test environment? I've seen we our product the product currently that I test falls into a HR or a payroll domain. Often I encounter issues with test environments, and I'm so frustrated at the end of the day. I always keep cribbing why test environments are like this. Why can't they configure it properly? So reliable test environments are very important. And then managing your technical debt. So technical debt is another crucial or important focus area that most people ignore. But how you manage your tech debt is a very important thing that if you look after, this will also attribute to the success of your project. And learning about the different releases and how coding and testing are not different and they're a part of the process, and how a synergy is exists between different processes, and also how do you collaborate with your customers. Do you talk to your customers or do you talk to the people who are using your product? Earlier I did not know that this had such an impact. From the time I started participating in hackathons to to understand to using this I mean, when I started having interaction with customers, it gave me a very good understanding. And how do you look at the bigger picture? So uh, so that's it from what I wanted to basically convey. So there's an for some of the references that I've mentioned, Lisi Hockey's course from Test Automation University has added on to my understanding. And these three books, Agile Testing, More Agile Testing, and Agile Testing Condensed, have given me a good understanding. And also, if you see, I've read this book thoroughly and I keep reading as and when I get time. So this is a great read, and I recommend to everybody who's into this space and strengthen your understanding before getting into the complex or jargons or keeping up upskilling yourself with the latest technologies. And it's very essential to have a solid understanding of your foundations And that's what my talk is all about. Nothing new or nothing I'm going to tell in extra. So I thank Synapse QA for giving me this opportunity and the entire team behind it, and also to the judges for patiently listening to me and who would be providing me feedback now. Thank you, and I'm open for questions now.
Thanks, Mahathee. That was a good start. And it is always good to have reminders on whole team approach and testing manifesto. Well done.
Thank you.
And now it's time for judges' feedback. I'll start with Anna.
Sure.
Hi, Mahathee. Thank you very much for
Hi,
the
Anna.
talk. Always an excellent, excellent speaker. Thank you very much. About
Thank you.
this talk, I really love your energy, and I really love your. You always speak about yourself, and it's amazing. It's how I can relate to what you're talking about. Is just it's always about you, and it's good. Um, this talk a little overwhelmed me. It was a
Okay.
little bit overwhelming because few reasons. Few reasons. One of that, you introduced several approaches. I would say manifest. Dan Ashby's thing, and it felt like you've been trying to persuade us on some things that you would think that we don't believe you, and you have to like create. You have to bring somebody else's uh, manifestos or schemas and say, "Look, you know, like smart people created this. It has to work." You know. Like if you don't believe me, believe them. That's how I felt. Um, one of the things about these approaches is you move the expertise to somebody else, you know, and like you saying, like here's the Nashby, he's smart, so and he said this, so that's it must be true. Uh, but I had my own. For example, I don't I like what Dan Ashby did, and I've seen this schema many times. Speakers love to use it. It looks good. I also saw Dan Ashby's presentation on that same schema, so I saw the original, and I kind of feel that it doesn't give you justice when you do something like that, just throwing it in. And Another thing about the Agile Manifesto, testing manifesto, for me, and I have a mind of my own. I have my experiences. I don't agree with everything that says in Agile Manifesto, Agile testing manifesto. I just it's my opinion, and when I hear you saying, "Hey, this is what it is," you never heard of it, but here it is, and it all true. I will disagree. You
Okay.
know, I I had and so I'm thinking, who is your audience? Maybe you have to assume that your audience knows a little bit more than, like, to me your presentation was, hey, you never heard about Agile, here's all these great things about Agile. And I don't know of any people who are like never heard about Agile. We're no longer, it's like maybe in 2012 half of the people didn't hear, even though it was already like major adoption of Agile practices. But right now I feel that people are more advanced, and you kind of starting from scratch and saying, hey, people, there is this like great thing called Agile that you don't know about, but I do, and I'm going to tell you. So maybe you want to change your approach a little bit in thinking who is your audience, who are you, who is your presentation directed to, you
Okay.
know? Um, like like for example, it's your team, right? They obviously know about Agile, so uh, tailor your presentation to be not all inclusive, but more targeted to like assume what is the needs of your audience, what they want to learn, what they want to know. Some of those things they already know, so assume they're more intelligent than you think they are. They're not like kindergarten. We're dealing with people who already got involved with those practices, and they really would love to learn from you what works for you, because like you're excellent, like you pick up all this and you use them, these techniques, and you know how to use them. So this is what I hear from you, and this is what I want to learn from you, how you using those techniques, and
Okay.
like what are your experience, you the excellent testers, what are your experience in it, why you recommend just those, you know
Okay.
so yeah, concentrate more on this, like you, what's unique about you, because you bring in this expertise that we want to hear about. So
Okay.
good luck, and thank you very much for your talk. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Next, Julia.
Hi, Mahathee. Thanks for your presentation. It shows that you have a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, but as Anna said, it was just too much information in 30 minutes. It felt a bit longer than it actually was because of just the wealth of information that you were presenting in each slide. So
Yes.
try to edit, do your talk and try to think of how can I make this more impactful with less, because when you started you were talking about how persons say they're doing agile but they're still doing waterfall, which is something that maybe some teams do. So they may say I'm doing agile, but they may not really be doing it
Yes.
in the best way possible. So what I would have probably liked to see from you and hear more from you is your story. You mentioned that you were one of those persons that were doing that, so how did you move from doing that? And so you
Okay.
started by saying you'll be talking about a book. A book takes a long
Yes.
time to read. So by
Yes.
trying to condense, and the name of the book is Agile Condensed, by trying to condense the book, which is already
Yes.
condensed, and then adding the manifesto and other things into it, it's just a whole lot. There were some images that you use that were a bit blurry, that if you could, for example, the one Dan Ashby infinity sign, if you
Okay.
could have maybe recreated it and say these are the areas that I personally use to test, and so maybe give your own interpretation of that instead of just re-showing it to say that this is what Dan Ashby said. How have you used it and applied it in the way that you work? So try to give it a more personal touch and try to not just cover the entire book and the entire everything about agile, because it's a lot of information, good information, but a lot of information. Share with us how you, in your experience, what pitfalls you maybe encountered, what things you were doing that weren't the best or weren't recommended, that you can now say, I've done I've made this mistake. Here's how I'm not making this mistake anymore, and here's what I learned, and I'm sharing that with you. Overall, I think you have a lot of knowledge. I think you just need to work on editing, also ensure that there are no blurry images. The slides are, a bit judged up, a little more appealing to the eyes. But overall, I think you made a good attempt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. And let's ask Naveen.
Yeah, thank you, Pragati, for the presentation. Yeah, I have seen. I mean, I saw your a lot of hard work you have put for these slides, because there's so many references, books,
Yeah.
blogs, right? I understand so many days you would have engaged to create this presentation.
Yes.
But as Julia and Anna said, right, there are so many key takeaways. So many. Uh,
Yes.
a story could have one moral or two morals, right?
Okay.
But 10 morals, right? People don't get it, right? Yeah, the same thing here. There's so many things you have shared, but so many things to take away. And at the end, right, people may forget or it will not gel when they leave the session.
Okay.
So that part you could have focused only couple of areas basically. Agile means I thought okay, old wine in a new bottle, but again the same thing actually it's coming up. Agile, and then you touch so many things, but that is not totally relevant to Agile. You could have stick to the core Agile part, right?
Okay.
It's like watching a movie full of climaxes. Like one movie could have only one climax or two climax. If the whole movie itself a climax, right? People will get bored, right?
Okay.
That's what happened this presentation. But I saw your lot of hard work, but little bit you would have done some tuning, so that will engage more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naveen, and thank you all the judges. I think Mahathee, you have wonderful feedback and takeaways from judges' feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, so before I say bye to you, I would love to ask you your overall feeling about Super Voice experience.
Think it's good, and in a way, like the judges said, two areas for improvement for me or for anybody who's watching this could be slides play a essential role, and you don't get to you day in and day out in your job if you don't have the habit of making slides or making presentations. This is a good place to learn or a good area to learn. Maybe I've made worse presentations, but the thing is that it's always a learning, and maybe I will do better. And another thing is doing a great presentation requires a lot of other practice sessions. So I perceive all these as practice matches, and maybe just do better for the future. And from each participant, I have learned something or the other. If from Jency, I have learned her calmness. From Josley, I have learned his graphics and visual. From Rahul, doing great presentations. And from Raman, I've learned the humor part. And from everybody, there's some or the other learning. So there's nobody whom I've not learned from, but putting at least two of the learnings that I'm taking back from here definitely is that making great presentations is one thing, because even in the initial years of your career, if you don't make presentations, there's always an opportunity that you get where you learn certain things that you don't do in your job. So this is one area I'm thankful to. So and also judges, the upfront feedback. Usually, feedback doesn't come, or feedback comes very late. So, feedback, if it comes immediately, adds a lot of perspective. And at least in the next time, you will avoid mistakes, and you will at least try. Maybe despite giving feedback, sometimes we might make the same mistakes, but at least you can try and not to do the same thing. So one good thing about this contest is like the feedback is very immediate, at least from the judges. At least I know three of the judges or two of the judges' views as to what or where can I improve myself. So this will help me in office, or this will help me in another conference. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Mahathir. It is good to know that it is helping you and the audience. So thank you so
Yes.
much. This is inspiration for organizers. So thank you so much and
Yeah.
all the best. See you
Thank
later.
you.
All the episodes of Super Voice are a treasure trove, and myself, being a tester, has learned a lot from these wonderful speakers, and I hope you do the same too. After the next episode, we may need to say goodbye to a few of our lovely contestants, but we know for sure that all of us have learned something during this 4 months journey. So let's wind up this episode and start waiting for the very last episode of Super Voice on playoffs round, where we'll have Rahul, Chinmay, and Trisha presenting on their topics. I can't wait to listen to them, and I want to know who our finalists are. I hope you are also waiting for that. So don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you won't miss out the episodes, and show some love to our participants by sharing how you feel about their talks in social media. And finally, a huge shout out to our sponsor Uilicious for supporting us. We do have a quick intro playing now for them, and it will help you to see the great features they provide.
Welcome to Uilicious. Today I will demonstrate how you can automate testing for your web application using Uilicious. The first step is to register a new account, then create a new project. Within our new project, let's create our first test. Writing a test in Uilicious is easy. It's like writing a user story. Anyone can write a test in Uilicious, even if you don't know how to code. Our philosophy at Uilicious is test user journeys, not HTML. Let me show you. First, let's go to the website we want to test. Then, fill the search field with the product we are looking for. Press enter to submit the search. Make sure I see the product we want. Then click on View Details. Click Add to Cart. And finally, let's ensure that I see a success message on the cart page. Let's run our test. Now, let's select our target browser. Uilicious supports all major browsers. Let's select our resolution. There are options for standard desktop, tablet, and mobile resolutions. And run the test. You can see the results of your test on the right. Uilicious will take a screenshot every step of the way to show you what is going on. And that's how simple it is to automate tests with Uilicious. Write tests that are readable and can be easily maintained by anyone in your team. Sharing the test results and comments. You can share the test results with your team and stakeholders as an interactive slideshow or a PDF. You can also annotate the report and write comments to describe issues more clearly. Now that we have created our test, we can schedule it to run automatically instead of manually pressing the run button all the time. Click on the schedule button to create a job for this test. Select the browsers and resolutions to run your test with. Set a schedule to run your tests as often as you need. Anytime, any day. Uilicious never sleeps. Uilicious will never complain either, unless a test fails. Email and webhook notifications can be configured to alert you when a test fails. You can monitor the status of your jobs on the Monitoring tab. Selecting a job reveals its history of test runs and associated reports. And there we go. That's how easy it is to write a test in Uilicious and set up a job to continuously test your web application. Testing is a piece of cake with Uilicious.
Saying bye is always hard, so till we meet again, this is Amala signing off.